Mayor Scott sheds a light on his youth curfew plan ahead of its launch this Friday. The steps police can and cannot take to ensure the safety of our young people. Plus, the city council questions what happens if juveniles don't listen to officers.
Can I get a question now, please?
Fox 45 News Project Baltimore demands answers from your school leaders on redacted test scores.
Are they in violation of federal law?
Do you have anything else that you would like to ask?
That's a new question.
We have talked about this issue.
No, we haven't.
A woman shocked after the city sells her home.
I'm thinking, I can't just lose this home. How can they do this?
The unpaid bill, she says, was a mistake as we make her voice heard. Then, how a local high school is honoring those who gave their lives for their country.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Fox 45 News is breaking down Mayor Brandon Scott's new summer youth engagement plan that he's calling Be More This Summer.
Now, that plan includes enforcement of the city's curfew. The hope is to reduce juvenile crime. Hours after it was announced, a teenager was hurt in a shooting.
And young people will not be forced to comply, and that has some people skeptical that it will work at all.
I want this to work, but I still see I don't hear the young people saying, I want to go to the rec. They're not excited about going to the rec centers.
Well, Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost sat down with the director of the Department of Juvenile Services about the youth crime crisis. We'll hear from her in a few minutes.
We have all the angles of the newly announced curfew announcement. Jeff Abel has city council members poking holes in the plan. But first, Keith Daniels with what enforcement will look like. Keith?
Well, Mary, the mayor's youth engagement strategy includes basketball games and pool parties to help keep the young people in the city safe. But tonight, the focus is on the curfew.
I've focused my entire career on prioritizing Baltimore's young people.
Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott with other city officials at the Inner Harbor with plans for his summer youth engagement strategy, which includes the reinstatement of the city's youth curfew.
In a way, and I want to be very clear about this, that limits unnecessary interactions with law enforcement.
The citywide curfew begins Friday, in effect through Labor Day. Those under 14 years old need to be off the streets by 9 p.m. Youth from 14 to 17 can stay out until 11 p.m. The mayor called for this curfew after 2 teens were shot while police were trying to break up a large crowd of minors. That happened at the Inner Harbor last month. The mayor pushed for the curfew, concerned about youth violence. I asked him, why does he think his curfew plan would be effective in curbing crime that involves juveniles?
This is a part of a wider plan, a whole plan of summer engagement for our young people that goes into the other engagements that we have and plans we have around young people to help us reduce violence. Never did I say that the youth curfew itself would go out here and be a silver bullet to reducing youth violence in Baltimore, because I'll tell you this again, there is no silver bullet.
According to an internal memo sent out to police officers Tuesday, a memo obtained by Fox 45 News, the police commissioner telling officers they should only enforce the curfew when they see a crowd of 10 or more minors in public places. Officers also told they will not be allowed to take any youth in custody solely for a curfew violation. Instead, officers are told to call on the youth to leave on their own or be transported to a youth connection center.
This is not going to be police going around criminalizing black children. In fact, when we engage young people around the curfew, that work is going to be led by social workers.
The curfew going into effect this Memorial Day weekend, lasting through Labor Day weekend. And according to the mayor's policy, first offense, the parent or guardian of a child will be cited a warning, and then the second offense comes with a fine of $50 or required family counseling. Now, a third offense, parents will face fines up to $500 or have to perform community service. Well, live tonight, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. And as Keith mentioned, police won't be able to transport curfew violators. Today, we learned nobody will nobody will if teens refuse. Now, that has many people, including city council members, asking what will happen if a child does refuse to go. The council members brought that question directly to Shante Jackson during the hearing tonight. Fox 45's Jeff Abel joins us now with a look at the council's questions. Some are actually skeptical the plan will work. Jeff?
You know, if a curfew violator refuses to go home and refuses to go to one of the city's 2 new youth connection centers, city leaders admitted tonight they do not have to.
I want this to work, but I still see these young people not obeying.
For 2 hours, council members questioned and re-questioned city leaders about the upcoming enforcement of the city's curfew, an enforcement which relies on the consent of those who violate the curfew.
It is our intention to be relentless.
The new enforcement measures do not allow for officers to arrest teen violators. Instead, officers offer an option to either leave the area or agree to be transported to a youth connection center where the city will supply food and games and attempt to locate their parents. However, it all hinges on the consent of those who violate curfew.
At the end of the day, though, if a young person decides that they are not going to go, I want to remind members of the public and members of this committee that we're not violating criminal code, and so we are not forcing them to go anywhere.
The city's enforcement plan is drawing strong words from the union that represents police officers. In a statement, the president wrote, "Since there is no enforcement component, these situations with juveniles will just turn into standoffs. This is a classic no-win situation for our BPD officers and the result of hands-off policing and a failing consent decree."
This plan also reduces law enforcement engagement.
While the new enforcement plan reduces the teens' interaction with city police officers, it also increases the demand on city police and other city agencies.
What would not be good is if we did this and a bunch of our own folks quit because it's too much to deal with.
We're asking folks who are interested in volunteering to volunteer first.
I know it's a start. I want to see it work, but I'm just trying to get to the point where you guys can really dig deeper.
Well, because police officers are already stretched to the limit, the police union president tells us tonight that this enforcement effort could become the true test of when the house of cards actually collapses. We're live tonight. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. Well, Pastor P.M. Smith, a longtime city resident and community leader, tells Fox 45 News he's skeptical about the curfew for different reasons, saying the responsibility for young people should fall on their parents.
The solution is not the government setting curfews for our children. The solution is parents involved and committed in the life of their young ones. It's parental responsibility, not governmental responsibility. It's not going to work. You can't enforce it.
Well, we want to hear from you at home. Do you think the mayor's summer youth engagement plan will work to reduce juvenile crime? So far, 100% of voters say no. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
As we mentioned, a teenager was shot this evening. It happened around 6:30 along Elmora Avenue. That's in Northeast Baltimore. Police say a 17-year-old was shot in the hand. Baltimore City isn't the only place seeing the state seeing a juvenile rise in crime. As the state grapples with that issue, Fox 45 News sat down with Vincent Schiraldi. He's the secretary of the Department of Juvenile Services. Mackenzie Frost has an exclusive interview with Schiraldi answering questions about youth violence and accountability.
Secretary Schiraldi says there are several things that simply aren't working within DJS, and a lot of it, he says, comes down to lackluster programming for some of these kids in these facilities all across the state. But he also says DJS is just one piece of this problem.
For the first time, we're hearing firsthand from the leader of an agency under fire.
We've heard from prosecutors and various police departments describe DJS as kind of a mess right now, especially when it comes to programming. What's your initial take on where things stand within the agency right now?
I think we need to do better in terms of programming. I think that we don't work as well as we could with a lot of people in communities who are living with young people every day. We don't work as well as we could with law enforcement, and I think that's an area we need to improve on, and that's going to be one of my biggest priorities.
Do you think that DJS is capable of providing the level of services that's required for these young people, as well as the level of accountability that some people in the community are expecting?
I think we do have the capacity to do that. I think the department has some excellent staff. They are committed. We just need to row in the same direction.
Schiraldi says Maryland incarcerates kids who are under 18 in adult prisons at a higher rate than most in the country.
Do you think that that includes the level of accountability that we're hearing some people call for when it comes to these young people who are committing crimes?
It needs to be both, and of course there needs to be accountability, but we also need to have the kind of services, supports, and opportunities for young people so that they don't reoffend and that they thrive. And I think that's where we're really lacking.
How does that factor into the laws that are being passed by the legislature that prevents kids 12 and under from being charged with some crimes, with the exception of 10 to 12-year-olds who are charged with murder or other violent crimes?
I think they should have adopted it. I think that kids that are really young are much more of a social service problem than they are a criminal juvenile justice problem.
Schiraldi's stance contrasts what Fox 45 News has been reporting from some law enforcement agencies. Anne Arundel County Police publishing this list of all crimes committed by kids 9, 10, 11 years old who can't be charged. Harford County Police writing on their Facebook page the law is, quote, narrow-minded legislation, adding it makes your communities less safe.
Do you see this surge in juvenile violence and juvenile crime that we're seeing in communities as a DJS problem?
DJS needs to pay attention to this, and what we're doing right now is we're talking to prosecutors and talking to police about who are the kids on our caseload that are most likely to either shoot somebody or be shot. We have a solution for 95% of the kids, but this 5% that's been really problematic lately and where we have seen an uptick in some categories of violent crime, we don't really have a good solution to that.
That 5% of problematic kids appears to be what's driving most of the concern now.
How long are you expecting the public to wait before those results are seen?
You know, we're going to start seeing results relatively quickly, but this is an ocean liner. It's not a speedboat. You can't just turn big departments like this. You can, and it's not also just us, right? We got a society full of guns and kids with problems. We can focus on some of that, and the governor is also focused on doing something to get control of guns in reasonable, moderate way.
DJS isn't the only agency with issues, but it is the department facing scrutiny, especially as more and young people find themselves either becoming victims or perpetrators of violent crime.
Governor Wes Moore has ordered a top-to-bottom review of DJS, but it's unclear when those results will come out. We also have a lot more from this conversation with the secretary, including his previous comments about how old someone should be before they're introduced to the adult criminal justice system, as well as his thoughts on how supervision within DJS is going right now. All you have to do is take out your phone and point it at the QR code that you see at the bottom of your screen, and it'll take you right to it. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
I'm Ron DeSantis, and I'm running for president to lead our great American comeback.
Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is officially a candidate for president. DeSantis made the announcement on Twitter tonight during a live conversation with CEO Elon Musk that glitched at times. Stay with Fox 45 News. We'll have a full report at 10:30.
Next on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock, after slamming the door on Project Baltimore last month, the state superintendent of schools finally agrees to an interview.
We are due for 5 minutes. I got to meet with the president.
The response to why publicly posted MCAP scores were taken down fuels more questions. A cross-country tribute to veterans arrives in Maryland. How local high school students are thanking those who made the ultimate sacrifice as Memorial Day approaches. And coming up at 10:30 tonight, outgoing Monzi director Shantae Jackson opens up about her departure and her future for the first time.
Comfortable and dry if you're headed out of town for the Memorial Day holiday weekend, but things may change as we head through the weekend itself. I'll also let you know if we're going to be dealing with some rain and cooler temperatures over the beach. That's in my Weather Authority forecast.
The public may soon learn more about student test results that were heavily redacted after Fox 45 News began reporting on those low scores.
As Chris Papps explains, the state superintendent in his first interview with Project Baltimore says the school board will discuss the matter next month.
As Project Baltimore approached the Maryland State Superintendent of Schools on Tuesday,
Mr. Chaudhry,
a police officer blocked our path, trying to stop us
I do apologize.
from speaking with Mohammed Chaudhry.
We are
For 5 minutes, I gotta meet with the president.
well. We can wait here for you.
Yeah, just give me a moment.
Okay.
But we were there to get answers, and for the first time, the state superintendent agreed to speak with us.
I look forward to speaking with you in a few minutes.
Having a high SAT and a low GPA.
The state school board's monthly meeting is where the public can hear what's happening in their schools. But the parents, taxpayers, and lawmakers who want more information on why state test scores were heavily redacted will have to wait another month.
Why isn't this being discussed in front of the public?
Go ahead. We will put it on the agenda. It will be discussed. We're going to talk about some of those matters in June.
This all began back in January when student test results known as MCAP scores were posted on the Maryland State Department of Education's website. Shortly after Fox 45 News began reporting on the low test scores, the data was taken down. When the results were reposted in March, many were replaced with asterisks, making it impossible for the public to see how some schools are performing. The change sparked outcry.
It's hiding the truth from parents.
The state education department is instituting a cover-up of what's going on in public schools. Is that outrage?
MSDE, in a statement, said it's following federal law and using enhanced de-identification to protect student privacy because of learning challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. But federal laws have not changed. MSDE made this decision on its own. With many questions still unanswered, Project Baltimore tried to speak with State Superintendent Mohammed Chaudhry at last month's board meeting, and he locked himself behind a door.
On the website.
1 month later, we tried again. And at this week's board meeting, the state superintendent and the board president, Clarence Crawford,
You ready?
Yeah.
spoke with us.
We've been trying to get interviews with you and talk to you for weeks now, over a month, about this topic. Why have you not answered any questions?
Chris, I've given you all kinds of responses respectfully.
Yeah.
But MSDE's responses have only led to more questions.
Was MSDE in violation of federal law prior to March with the way the data was being reported?
MSDE was not in violation of federal law.
Then why was the data changed?
Because we're applying, we have a new test, and we have shifting end sizes.
But it quickly became clear we would not be getting any new information.
This has all been laid out for you, Chris.
and you've seen the IG report. So. And you know, so where we stand, and you.
Well, the IG report simply said that you could do it. We're asking, why did you do it?
The Maryland Inspector General for Education released a report earlier this month confirming what Project Baltimore already reported, that states have the discretion to choose and implement methods to protect student privacy, which means the state chose to make less information available to the public.
Well, the changes were made in March, so the changes were posted to the website.
We're going to, Chris,
can I get a question now, please?
We're going to present the data as we talk about low-performing schools in June.
This exchange lasted about 4 minutes, with President Crawford often answering for the superintendent.
Do you have anything new that you'd like to ask us about? We've
Baltimore City Schools is currently on their website. They are posting the MCAP data the way that it was originally posted in January. Are they in violation of federal law?
Do you have anything else that you would like to ask us?
That's a new question.
We have talked about this issue.
No, we haven't.
Yes, we have. And from my perspective, we have spoken about...
City Schools is still reporting the data before it wasn't redacted.
Chris, we have talked about this matter. Do you have another topic you'd like to talk about? Anything new you want to add?
Well,
we've covered that.
But, sir, I just asked you a new question that hasn't been answered.
Thank you much.
Everyone should be applying the data.
But why was the data sent to city schools in the first place before it was redacted?
I need to talk to
School systems always get the raw data. That's how it works. And then you run the raw data, and if you have small n sites, Chris, I've given you this response. In June, we're going to do a deep dive on low-performing schools. It's fine. I know you want to push this narrative, but it's not okay. It's just not okay, Chris.
But state lawmakers have reached out to you, the public has reached out to you, special interest groups have reached out to you.
I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
You can watch Project Baltimore's full 4.5-minute interview with MSDE right now. Follow the QR code on your screen to take you there.
I still cannot believe that that's here, and that's thanks to this community.
A tribute to veterans is now in Baltimore County. Right after the break, we take you to Hereford for a first look at the Eyes of Freedom.
A nationally traveling veterans tribute has made its way to Baltimore County ahead of Memorial Day.
Fox 45's Maxine Stryker is in Hereford with this story.
It was a sight to see at Hereford High School as a procession arrived escorting the Eyes of Freedom, a nationally traveling veterans tribute.
So special.
Hereford High School students, part of the 4 Our Troops Club, helped organize the arrival ahead of Memorial Day weekend.
I'm so excited that this is in our community and that we have this opportunity to show this to our community and to honor our veterans in our community in this way.
The tribute honors the service and sacrifice of 23 fallen Marines and Navy corpsmen of Columbus, Ohio's Lima Company, killed in Iraq in 2005.
I just think it's really important, like after having family members who served, it's always a good philosophy to have to honor those who serve for us and granted us the freedom that we are now blessed with and privileged with.
Veterans.
Almost 22 years in the Army, active duty, multiple tours, Kuwait, Iraq, Desert Storm.
Like Carmelo Genco.
Memorial Day and Veterans Day to a veteran and a veteran's family, there's no better holiday or a time to remember our fallen or just recognize their service.
Probably 20.
And Gold Star mother Robin Anderson, a part of the welcoming ceremony.
From the time he was just a little guy, we knew that he was going to go into the military because it was just in his blood.
Robin's son, Norman, a Hereford High graduate, joined the Marines in 2002 with his best friend, Josh Schneider.
He got married on August 5th, deployed August 26th, and then was killed October 19th. It's almost 18 years since he's been killed.
Just over a month later, Snyder was also killed in Iraq.
Straight back here, guys.
I still cannot believe that that's here, and that's thanks to this community.
As students worked to set up the memorial inside the school's auditorium for the community to take in for days to come.
They're like life-size murals that depict like those who are a part of Lima Company.
With the combat boots and dog tags of those 23 men on display.
Some of them still have Sam from Iraq in them.
It's a painful but important reminder.
Our country wouldn't be what it is today without the people who serve it, and also we don't get the privileges we get at home without the people overseas who are protecting us and the people here at home who are protecting us.
To always remember those who served.
It's so important that we never forget the men and women that are still serving.
And those, like Robin, left living without them.
I'm blessed to have had him for 21 years. Blessed.
In Hereford, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
A key leader in the mayor's summer youth engagement strategy is getting set to leave and refusing to answer questions about it. The tense moments when Fox 45 News pressed Shantae Jackson about her departure.
The city sold her home, but she still lives in it. The costly mistake made that has her fighting for the roof over her head. We are following three big stories at 10:30.
A simple mistake has a Northeast Baltimore woman at risk of losing her home. How it happened and why she's blaming the city.
Monzi director Shantae Jackson refusing to answer Fox 45's questions about her departure. What happened when Mackenzie Frost pressed her this afternoon?
Plus, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is officially running for president.
We begin there. The Republican governor announced his candidacy on Twitter Spaces this afternoon. He also filed his paperwork with the Federal Elections Commission.
Mike Magnoli with our Sinclair sister station in Florida has a look at the announcement and what's next in the race for the White House.
Well, I am running for president of the United States to lead our great American comeback.
Governor DeSantis announcing his run for president on Twitter Spaces and releasing this video.
Truth must be our foundation, and common sense can no longer be an uncommon virtue.
Ron DeSantis was first elected to Congress in 2012 and was re-elected twice. Then in 2018, he won the governor's mansion in a tight race. But it was COVID that made Ron DeSantis a household name. Governor DeSantis allowed Florida businesses to reopen while most of the nation was shut down. He got kids back in schools and opposed masked mandates, but made sure that vulnerable seniors were first in line when scarce vaccines first became available. And he made vaccine requirements in Florida illegal. Remote learning during the pandemic exposed parents to what was going on in their kids' classrooms like never before. And mandatory masking was a polarizing issue. Through the State Board of Education, targeted legislation, and vocal support for like-minded school board candidates, the governor has given parents more say about what happens in public school. He signed a law preventing public schools from teaching gender identity or sexual orientation in pre-K through 8th grade. And that led to war with the Magic Kingdom after Disney came out against the legislation, calling it anti-gay. The governor then dismantled the company's self-governing sweetheart deal from the 70s, and the suits and countersuits will likely go on for years. Since winning a second term in a landslide last fall, the governor has enacted more of what he calls his anti-woke agenda, fighting identity politics, defunding diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at taxpayer-funded universities, keeping trans women from competing in girls' school sports, and blocking children from receiving medical interventions to change their biological sex before they turn 18. He also took a hard line on more traditional conservative issues, banning abortion after 6 weeks in the state and signing a slate of bills cracking down on illegal immigration. He is not just a Florida political figure, he's a national political figure. How do you think that happened and why?
I think it happened because of how he governed. During the COVID pandemic. He fought the conventional wisdom at the time, which was to shut down and lock people up and close everything. And he did that for a while and then saw the folly of that and was one of the first ones to open up the state of Florida, and the people loved it.
Peter Feynman is a national Republican committeeman based in Palm Beach County. In July, he'll go to the Republicans' National Convention in Milwaukee and vote for the party's presidential nominee. Feynman says this primary season will be fierce. The rivalry between DeSantis and former President Trump could divide the party like never before.
Because Donald Trump is obviously no shrinking violet, but guess what? Ron DeSantis is equal to the task, so it should be pretty wild to watch.
Do you think what he's doing resonates with a national audience, or do you think that he finds more opponents when he goes to the national stage?
I think Americans are quickly understanding that we have government schools. And so this idea of a governor getting involved in what's being taught in the school, or the Department of Education getting involved, and that being too much government in schools is just kind of crazy.
Tiffany Justice, co-founder of Moms for Liberty, a Florida movement that became national, says DeSantis understands the growing frustration among parents of school children who feel that education has become about indoctrination. And Justice says DeSantis has spearheaded the state policies that are much needed course corrections.
I don't know when I agreed to my child being taught that they could be a boy or a girl or a tree in kindergarten. And I think the message is resonating. I think that this is a message about protecting children and letting kids be kids that resonates with a really big group of Americans. And it crosses party lines. It crosses racial lines, religious lines. I think this is an issue that can bring parents together, bring Americans together.
Governor DeSantis is a husband and a father. He served as a Navy JAG lawyer and then a prosecutor before seeking public office.
I'm Ron DeSantis, and I'm running for president to lead our great American comeback.
So for the next couple of days and nights, it's going to be a lot of strategizing and fundraising here at the Four Seasons in Miami. I'm Mike Magnoli reporting.
We are following some breaking news tonight in the Bromo Arts District. A man is dead after he was shot along North Paca Street just after 9 tonight. Police say the man was shot several times. No word on any suspects.
Mayor Brandon Scott announces his summer youth engagement strategy today, known as Be More This Summer, including that youth curfew. And here are some of the key points of the plan. The curfew starts Friday. It applies to anyone under 17. For children younger than 14, the curfew is 9 p.m. until 6 a.m. For 15 and 16-year-olds, the curfew starts at 11 p.m. Now, social workers will lead enforcement, offering to bring young people out after curfew to outreach centers until a parent can pick them up. Children will not be forced to go to those centers. Now, there will be 3 static locations staffed throughout the curfew in Fells Point, Federal Hill, and the Inner Harbor. Parents can face a fine of up to $500 if their children repeatedly break the curfew.
Well, today's announcement was the first time the director of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, Shante Jackson, made a public appearance since she announced she is leaving the office earlier this month. Monzi is set to play a major part in the summer program, but its leader is set to leave June 30th. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost pressed Jackson on that today.
I know that you announced your resignation. You're planning to leave. Can you say where you plan to go?
Let me stop right here.
Okay.
Never, ever will I prioritize any news about me over top of news about our young people.
That's why I didn't
so
ask
we
during
can
the
save
press
that question for a time when I'm ready to share it. Thank you.
Do you have any idea who will be taking your place, especially given this youth curfew plan and Monzi's role in this?
Well, Jackson also oversees the Safe Streets program, which Fox 45 News has been investigating for months. You can find more on the investigation, Jackson's departure, and the summer youth engagement plan on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
A simple mistake puts a Northeast Baltimore homeowner in peril. According to Ancilla Crawford, a lien meant for another row home caused the city to mistakenly sell her house. Fox 45 Rebecca Pryor has that story.
It's a warning that would rattle any homeowner.
My hands were shaking.
Recently found on Ancilla Crawford's front door, a tax sale certificate giving notice her property had been sold last June to an out-of-town LLC for $12,000, leaving Crawford shocked and confused.
What prompted it? Because I'm paying my taxes. I'm paying the water bill, so in my mind, everything is up to date.
Not sure how this could have happened, Crawford took 2 days off of work to sort things out with the city. Officials inside the city's municipal building revealing the lien on her home triggered by an overdue lawn mowing bill. The only problem, Crawford doesn't have a lawn.
I told them, this wasn't my property. This was an error.
Pictures of the grass the city was called out to cut show Crawford's address on the sign, but the backyard is of the vacant house across the street. A far cry from Crawford's fully furnished row home that she's invested heavily in over the last few years.
They had me going back and forth. I had to stand in line.
After hours of debate with city services, Crawford says she was told the best way to make the problem go away, pay the lawn mowing fee and reimburse her home's buyer for a number of charges they paid to the city. In total, costing her nearly $2,900.
It was really heart-wrenching.
Making matters worse,
here we are again.
Former federal and state prosecutor Thuru Vignarajah says just a few doors down, a similar situation unfolded for 68-year-old Vanessa Wagner, whose home he helped save back in 2021.
How many times must we knock on the door of City Hall asking for some help?
Vignarajah also questioning how tax sales can be so easily sparked on these homes in Northeast Baltimore when homes in higher priced parts of the city with unpaid fines for higher amounts go untouched, including the Guilford home of Governor Wes Moore, where at one point, years worth of unpaid water bills racking up an outstanding balance of $21,000.
Do we have different rules for how we dispense with residential property in Guilford versus Northeast Baltimore? Because I don't get these calls from property owners in Guilford or Roland Park or Locust Point.
Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
New at 10, an arrest in the murder of former Morgan State University basketball player Tracy Carrington 5 years ago. Tonight, Kenneth Davis is in custody and charged. Carrington was a witness to a double murder in Towson in April of 2018. The alleged gunman in that case They were out on bond at the time of the shooting and are now convicted. Months later, on September 6th that year, Carrington was shot several times getting into her car in Overly. Tonight, no word if Davis, the suspect now, was connected to the murders Carrington witnessed.
The people of Uvalde, Texas, and around the country are marking 1 year since the mass shooting at Robb Elementary School. 19 children and 2 teachers died in that attack. Church bells tolled once for each life lost. The names of the victims read at a butterfly release ceremony. Well, despite an outpouring of support, victims' families still have questions about the 77 minutes it took police to respond that day.
People refuse to accept the facts. They refuse to acknowledge their incompetence, basically. And that information will eventually.
Uvalde continued into the evening, including a community-wide service of remembrance and a candlelight vigil.
Thousands of people will head to the Eastern Shore this Memorial Day weekend. What you need to know about the holiday in Ocean City.
And it looks like we're going to be dealing with potential of some temperatures that are going to be warming up as we head into the next several days, but also a risk of rain into the weekend. We'll let you know all about that into Memorial Day in a couple of minutes.